Hello to everybody out there in radio/podcast land. I hope you're doing well. This is Matt from the Rub Wrestling Podcast, along with Chris and Josh, who are, we're starting to get slightly fatigued here, gentlemen. I think from all of the PLEs, PPVs, whatever you want to call them. We've been working some double duty this week, but, as much as we're kind of been working hard, the kids are going back to school tomorrow, so I just have to call them suckers, basically. So I can't wait to see the sad faces walking into that building tomorrow. It'll be great, as much as you need an education. Nobody likes going back to school when you've been on vacation for 10 weeks, correct? What am I right or am I wrong? All right. So basically with that, guys, if you need to reach out to us, you can find our podcast. Please hit a follow or subscribe. You can find us on all the major places. You can find us on Apple. You can find us on Google. You can find us on Spotify. Big hits for us. You can find us on YouTube. Still going to work on some video maybe later on, but we're kind of working on that right now. But we're getting a lot of views from YouTube, so thank you so much. Also, if you have any questions for us, you want to talk rumors, you want to bring stuff up, you want to let us know how you're doing, you can hit us up at the rubwrestling@outlook.com. That is our podcast email. Feel free to hit us up at any time, and you can have your question asked on the podcast. But with that being said, really, really busy a couple days. Saturday was WWE Payback. Sunday was All Out, and after there was a pre-LE the week before with All In up at Wembley Stadium. Obviously we've talked about that during the preview show, so if you haven't watched that episode, just go back and watch that and then come back to this one. But with that being said, Chris, out of the two shows that came out Saturday and Sunday, which one did you like the best and why? Enlighten us.
Well, moving into probably I'll admit I fell asleep for a bit of All Out. I think the atmosphere to me, I did like the Payback atmosphere until I kind of got deeper into the All Out atmosphere, and I think one of the big reasons that was so I guess to put it in a perfect situation, about halfway through the All Out show, I was leaning towards Payback as being my favorite show. And then some matches got the crowd back into it. The crowd started getting louder. And then with the last matches where I was fully awake and I saw, I'd have to say just because of... I'd have to say that All Out was my favorite of the two. At one time it wasn't. I even texted you that I thought it was Dynamite Plus at one point. And then towards the end of it, it won me back. So just like it won the crowd in Chicago back, the show won me back as well.
It was shock for me. I had some Red Bull. It gave me some wings, and I had like some sugar and stuff, so it was good. It worked out for me. So I didn't necessarily fall asleep. I actually watched back a little bit last night as well, going across probably at 2 a.m. some of the matches that we went forward. But Josh, big news coming out the day before All Out, which was that we heard that CM Punk was actually terminated from All Elite Wrestling. And we know that CM Punk is your best friend. And we know that you guys hang out sometimes, and that's just a joke. Obviously that doesn't happen where you are up in Ontario, Canada. But with that being said, what are your original thoughts about CM Punk's termination and going through, and do you think that this is going to hinder or be a great thing for AEW down the road?
Well, I'm quite pleased because I don't like Brooksy. Causes too much turmoil, and it seems like every other day he's in a different fight with somebody else over something that's irrelevant, and he just takes things too personally. And as other wrestlers have said, that it seems like he's got some mental health problems. Clearly that's the case. I mean, this guy's sober, straight edge, but he acts like a maniac. He's already gifted with everything that he needed in AEW. He's given the title. He's booked exactly the way that he wants. But it seems like he takes every little thing personally. He's a cancer to the locker room. I hope he goes to WWE and ruins the WWE as well, so that we can focus on AEW, the show that I much prefer. But if he goes to WWE, then that's a shame for them, because he's just going to do the same thing over and over again. It's weird that he has so many enemies, and there's people that he has that seem like they're really on his side, and he's really supportive of like the LGBTQ2+ community, but like there's something wrong with the guy. And if he's that much of a cancer to the locker room, where he's like fighting the pillars of your whole company, the company that got you the people that got you where you were, you added CM Punk, 3 years into your promotion. Sure, he gave you an added boost and he's a big draw, but if it's going to be at the cost of your other superstars, it's not worth
It
it.
felt like a scenario for me when I'm kind of thinking about, and I don't like this analogy, but it's kind of what it is. It's like the kid that gets bullied all the way through for a couple years and then realizes like, oh, he's the young kid and the older kids are picking on him, and then he realizes that he's the older kid and then he could do the bullying, but the younger kids are standing up to him, and he's like, well, why is this even happening? Like, people should just be listening to what I'm saying. Like, I've been in the business for so long. This is everything that I possibly could do, and nobody's listening to me. They're just self-entitled. And it seems like that's the biggest case that we're seeing. I mean, Chris, when you talk about CM Punk and this whole situation, and we can go over the podcast, we've talked about the cancer, exactly what Josh said. Do you actually see him going anywhere else, or do you think like his career's finished at this point unless he makes retributions and amends?
This has got to be close to the end. I don't think unless he's in dire straits, maybe he'll show up on the indies here or there. But I just think like Josh said he's been given his chance. He's been given 2 chances. He got his own show. he caused a huge problem, and now he got his own show to keep him away, and he still messes that up. I don't know. Like I said earlier, he's definitely a narcissist. It's like he self-sabotages every opportunity he gets. Like the UFC, he should have never been there. And then obviously I don't know if he could have trained any harder, but he looked awful both times. So, I mean, he couldn't have been putting that much work into it. So if we see him pop up, it's going to be like what we seen while he was out of wrestling, maybe in a random indie horror movie or something like that. Because the more we look at Punk's background and how cool the pipe bomb was, and how like stand up he is for the stuff he is. I mean, he has no friends anymore. He has FTR, and I mean, look what he did to Colt Cabana. Look what he does to everybody that he gets kind of close to. He kind of just turns everything the wrong way for everybody else involved. Ace Steel lost his job because of him.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I mean, it's the exception of his wife, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, when you kind of go through, I'm just going to be blatantly honest, and we'll get to the shows because I think the shows are much more important than talking about this. I do think that this will come up again, but I will say I will look forward to him in 2026 when WWE decides to let him in the Royal Rumble, and then basically squashes the ever-loving shit out of him. So you never know, Chris. You might get your Omos throwing CM Punk over the top rope, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the main show, for this Payback / All Out review show, we're going to start with the WWE show that happened on Saturday night, which was, I can't really remember where it was. Does anybody remember where it was? Does it even matter at this point? I think it was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I actually remember that the last second. Real decent show. So basically, in the preview show, we kind of rated what we thought were going to be the best matches. And we're going to switch one of the matches up because one just really stood out. Basically, we actually previewed the three that we previewed were the street fight for the tag team titles. We previewed Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez. We also previewed the main event with Seth Rollins and Nakamura. But what we are going to start off with is we're going to start off with a show that, like a match that we thought wasn't going to be very hot and actually turned out to be one of the best matches of the night with Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch. And I mean, there was a lot of comments when we were kind of watching in our chat with me, Josh, and Chris that we're going through. And this match turned out to be a complete banger. Chris, were you absolutely surprised with what you saw? And do you just really think that this is actually 2 really good wrestling minds that came up with a really well-produced match that came out of nowhere?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere for me. I think what I said is I think we all had the idea that Ripley and Raquel was going to be like the big stiff match, and then this match was really going to have to like pull its weight to, like, because you have two women's matches on the same card. But yeah, I thought Trish did really well. Thought the storytelling was good. It was classic. That's how you run a cage match. You have one person who has somebody on the outside who slams the door into somebody's face. I mean, They checked all the boxes for the gimmick for me for sure. A lot of cage stuff went on. Trish looked good. I thought she was gonna have to get carried the whole time. She looked good. She gave it. Maybe this is one of her last matches. So maybe maybe they spent more time with her to get her comfortable. But it was my surprise of the weekend.
Yeah, and I think it was funny to really hear that Trish Stratus has never been in a cage match up to that. I believe they mentioned that on the show on Saturday night, that was her first one. And I think you kind of hit all the right notes. I mean, there was climbing the cage, there was trying to get to the door. At one point there was a superplex off close to the top of the cage. I mean, you got to keep in mind Trish Stratus is 46 years old in there, and she didn't look like she was 46. Like, she looks like she could probably wrestle till she's 50. That's how good of a shape she's in. But just the storyline with even Zoe Stark coming into the match at the very end of it, just fantastic storytelling from what we saw from beginning to end. Josh, when you kind of look at these gimmick matches, we kind of see these really stupid ones sometimes in WWE. Should these be used really sparingly, or would you like to see these matches more involved with the women, like ladder matches, cage matches? Do you think that those A and S tier women that are on SmackDown and Raw can really do those matches to justice? That would be great on these PLEs. That would really make for these A plus matches that we kind of see. Because I think that match for me was an A or an A plus when I finish it off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with Trish and Becky being the ones who participated in this match, and not to say anything bad about Trish or Becky, but there's so many greater athletes on the women's division that could pull this type of matches off. Becky Lynch, obviously, at the top as well. But if these two were able to pull off this caliber of match, I think that if you allowed for the production to be put into the women's matches and allowed the women to actually be part of the script and making it sure that they're like telling the story themselves as opposed to having someone writing it for them just by themselves. I think that's part of the problem with the women, is that they're really not booked to be strong like this, and they don't want to put the time into a match like this. In a cage match, you need a good 30 minutes because that's how you develop the story, and they really let them develop the story. Like Chris and like Matt, like you both said, that like lots of action with the cage, the superplex. There was callbacks to previous like women champions. Like Lita and Victoria, when they used the Widow's Peak and the Twist of Fate, and it was really well done, and I was really appreciative that they allowed these two women to do that, because that's something that the WWE and AEW, especially AEW, don't actually let the women do, is have a match like that. The only thing that the match was missing for me was a little bit of color.
Well, definitely Trish, I think at the end of it, had that massive bruise on her forehead, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of it tonight if she's there to actually see what the hell it looks like. I'm sure they're going to try and cover it up with makeup, but I really hope they don't. I hope it's gruesome. But I think at the end of the day, there's one kind of X factor that we look at these matches that we don't necessarily understand too, is how much time are people actually putting into the student side of it. There's one thing just to be athletic, like you were saying, Josh, and have all the athleticism in the world, but do you know how the psychology of the match works? And I think one of the things I'm starting to realize when you're kind of watching the women is that psychology is not there. I mean, you look at certain wrestlers have it. Becky Lynch has it in droves. She also is married to Seth Rollins, and he's also an acute like student of the game still to this. You look at people like Christian Cage, like he's one that just has a complete mindset for how everything should go in a match. He's done every type of match you can think of. He's just got massive, big brain for wrestling that happens. But how many of the women can say it? And I'm starting to see it in the men a lot too, like where you have these highly athletic kids that are coming in, and they really have, like Chris on some of the NIL deals, where they don't really know anything about the sport. They're just there for that athleticism. I think we can all agree that you look at somebody like Gable Steveson or whatever his name is. He has no idea what it is. He knows how to amateur wrestle, but doesn't know how professional wrestling really works, right? So I think the question is, I agree with you, Josh, 100%, but the question is, do those people with the athletic minds, minus I'd say Charlotte and Asuka, does that Bianca Belair have what's between the ears to really pull that match off? We know athletically she can. Does she have the psychology to keep that storyline going, right? I think that's a big one, and that's going to be a big talking point for the women's division in the next year or two to see how much movement there can be there. Basically, for our second match that we're going with for the night was just an all-out brawl for the tag team titles, which actually the Judgment Day actually took the tag team titles from Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in a Steel City street fight. This match basically had it all. It had weapons. It was almost it almost felt like a true tribute to Terry Funk and what he was doing through in those hardcore matches from back in the day. But we saw basically Kevin and Sammy wearing the Pittsburgh Penguins, jerseys going out and basically going against the Judgment Day, who threw out every single member in this match. Now, Josh, when you're looking at this match from a standpoint, what would you rate it, and would you compare this match to some of the better hardcore matches that you've seen probably 10 years ago when hardcore was really at its peak?
Yeah, I think it was an A plus for me. I like Chris. I did fall asleep actually through both pay-per-views because I'd been having such a hectic week with the strike. So I did rewatch everything the next day. So maybe that's what kind of took the steam out of it, is because I knew it wasn't live and I kind of knew the result. Because this match particularly, I had actually fallen asleep during, which is weird because it was a hardcore match. I just was exhausted. Anyways, I don't think it was, top 10 of hardcore matches, because I actually think that the AEW is consistently putting out top 10 hardcore matches on a weekly basis. It almost seems, with all the, different types of hardcore matches that they're putting on. This was a very good match. I really enjoyed it. The storytelling was really good. I actually really enjoy the finish. Gets the belts off of Kevin and Sammy, allows them to move their story along. Hopefully they can find a way to split the belts up so they can have two tag teams, or just create one tag belt for as an undisputed belt. The Judgment Day having so many belts is really great. The spot with Kevin Owens jumping off and doing that swanton, he might have hit just by an inch. He almost missed completely and landed right on his ass on the ground, which would have been interesting. I thought the finish was pretty good, with Dom stepping in with the Money in the Bank title. It's just kind of interesting how they're teasing a breakup between Damian and Finn, and now they've got the titles. So I guess maybe they're walking that back, or they just have a longer term plan going on for them. But it was it was A plus for me. I can't hear you, Matt.
See, that's what happens when you don't take it off mute. Thanks for letting me know, Josh. My mistake. That's the first time I've ever done this on this podcast. But I was just saying, the kind of win at all cost mentality, having JD McDonough come out, having Rhea Ripley hit a spear on, I think it was Owens, through the barricade, and having Dom involved was kind of everything that's happened over the past couple weeks. And I know, Josh, you joke with those title eliminators where you say they're already the champions, but I think they were. And I think they were. I think, honestly, I think the Judgment Day, like we said in the previous show, were favored to take the titles. And I think it poses a really interesting question. So, Chris, fact or fiction? Right now, we have Dom with the NXT North American title. We have Rhea Ripley with the Women's Heavyweight Championship and World title. We have, Finn Balor, and we have Damian Priest as the undisputed tag team titles. And we have an absolute killer in JD McDonough, who's not part of the group. But basically, they all have titles. Do the Judgment Day at this point rank in the top 5 of best stables of all time in WWE?
Oh, that's a tough question, especially without having to think about it. But top 5, it's interesting because, I mean, as we keep saying, we're more of a pro AEW podcast, but Judgment Day is one of the things that I like most about WWE right now. So I like their entrance, I like their graphics, I like the way they all conduct themselves. I think they found 4 perfect people that work together who are all completely different, and then it's working. Top 5. That is a tough on the spot
here's
question.
just some to throw at you, right off the bat. I mean, I know where I have them, and I'll tell you what I think afterwards. But I mean, you think of DX, you think of the NWO, you think of the Radicals. At one point would be a great one.
The Nation.
the Undertaker's ministry, and then the
The
corporation,
corporate ministry.
the corporation. I mean, we can just go on with some of the ones.
Well, the
Four Horsemen was actually in
Yeah.
there at one point and trying to come back in, right? Like, so that it's just I think based on the amount of titles, when was the last time that you saw that many titles in a stable? It's hard to even think.
Yeah, probably the NWO or the Elite,
Yeah.
maybe for a bit.
So that
Or Undisputed Era had a bunch of gold.
they're
for a
another
while.
one. That's another one that you can even throw in. So does that put them in
Yeah.
the top 5?
Oof. They're close. If you ask me, that, like, when I think about it, I just like everything about them. I don't dislike a single thing they do. They're on the bubble. They're outside of the top 5 for me. They still have some time before they inevitably break up. Well, let's see how these tag belts treat the two of them, because it could just put another wedge in the relationship between Balor and Punishment, or sorry, that's Punish.
Damian Priest,
Yeah,
also formerly known as
Damian
Punishment
Priest, yeah.
Martinez.
Yeah. So I'm going to give it some more time let's revisit this when they break up, and we'll see if they're into my top 5. Right now, they're on the cusp.
Josh, quickfire, yes or no, top 5?
No.
I also second that. I don't have them in the top 5 either, but I actually have them on the cusp of the top 10. So I think time will tell with the stable. I think they have the most titles out of everybody, but I have to agree, Chris. I think they're probably one of the most interesting storylines on WWE TV, period, because they're also showing up on NXT. They're also, occasionally, they were showing up on SmackDown, too, and they're one of the only rotating groups that have been going around to the different shows, because let's face it, they're the highest ratings draw on that show. And so the more that they're on, the more that you're going to want to go through. It's like Cole and MJF, right? The more you put them together, the more you give them airtime. It doesn't matter where they go. People are going to watch. And I think with Judgment Day, because they know shit's going to happen, they love Rhea. They absolutely disgustingly hate Dom. I mean, those two can go anywhere on any TV show, and they're just going to get booed or cheered for whatever they're going to do. Mostly booed, though. So I think this match was really interesting. I think it was a top draw match. I kind of had a feeling it would be, but I mean, it's with those types of matches, Josh, we talked about chaos, and I think if you don't have an organized chaos, sometimes it just kind of gets really out of hand. And I think we saw that with a couple matches, not just with Payback, but just with here too. And I think overall, I think it was a great match. Now, that being said, we're going to kind of move towards the main event for Payback, which was basically Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight title, who retained against Shinsuke Nakamura. Really good storyline build up with this, with Nakamura and actually having the great Muta that was actually out front sitting and watching the match. Kind of going into kind of this Japanese samurai kind of shtick a little bit for Nakamura moving forward. But the storyline about Seth's neck, Seth's back, was a really, really intriguing storyline. And Nakamura really kind of exposed those areas during the match that we went through. Now, it's kind of interesting with Nakamura losing the title. So, Josh, what do you think happens to Nakamura after this storyline? Do you feel that if the storyline isn't compelling with him continuing the feud with Rollins, do you have a feeling that he's just going to get lost in translation on the Raw roster if they don't continue with this feud?
I mean, it's quite possible. I think that based on what happened after Payback went off air, he attacked Seth Rollins again. So I'm expecting something to be shown on Raw tonight of that to continue the storyline. You would hope so. I think Shinsuke gets Seth along a little bit farther. I mean, hopefully Shinsuke can get, an actual title shot again and win the title off of Seth Rollins, and then have a little run there and be a little bit in between the next great thing. Maybe I don't see him as a long-term champion. Hopefully, that'll continue, and he has an opportunity to, face Seth again and win the title. But I think that it could just be like the stepping stone to the next story, and he's just kind of in between while we have some of these like mid pay-per-views or PLEs, as you may say. So I think that hopefully he continues because he's got more to show, and I'd really like to see more of him. But I don't have high hopes that he'll be a champion, and if he is, it won't be for long term.
So, Chris, question for you: when you kind of looking at this whole match, and you kind of talk about storylines and Nakamura and everything that's going on, and it's kind of interesting. Because I mean, obviously, we could sit here and talk about both cards and have a 3-hour podcast if we really wanted to go through each and every match. But I felt on this card slightly disappointed by some of the matches that I thought were going to be much better than they were. Like, I, honest to God, thought the LA Knight and Miz match was going to be kind of a banger on the side. It was absolutely disappointing, in my opinion. LA Knight did his stick. I don't think LA Knight really lost a lot of steam from what happened. It just didn't kind of come out together as a great match. Austin Theory didn't look great against Rey Mysterio. He had a tough time with a smaller opponent, I felt. And, that's basically somebody that you also have at the top of your company eventually in the next 3 to 5 years from what people were saying, right? Do you feel that this match was enough to kind of keep them going? Like, because I don't feel as that the title holder, Seth, is really going to lose any of the steam or anything that he has. Did you feel that Nakamura loses his steam from losing this match and from the performance? And, like, basically, what did you think of his performance overall after being given a really good storyline with at the top of the card in a main event on a WWE pay-per-view?
I thought, does he? How much? I don't think he loses steam. I think the new character, him by himself, him not with the tag team. I think they kind of rejuvenated Shinsuke for people, so I don't think he loses too much steam after this, especially with attacking Rollins after it looks like they're going to continue the storyline. I kind of do agree with Josh how this is kind of one of it's like filler for the title until they come up with a story, to like a long-term story. So they're just going to put this in here for a couple months while they figure out and imagine the next story that's coming. But yeah, it's tough for Shinsuke. I mean, he's always got that music. I mean, that music always gets everybody. So he's always got something. There's always something we're going to cheer him for. But he wrestled like Nakamura wrestles. I liked it. I thought it was an enjoyable main event. Is it a secondary main event because they had another title so they can put this title as the main event? Yeah. Usually you wouldn't see somebody like Nakamura in it. If you ask me, they would be kind of a bigger player. But similar to Josh, I would like him to get the title. There wouldn't be anything wrong, if you ask me, with having Shinsuke win the title and then Rollins winging it back, ending the feud and moving forward. I'd be happy with that. But we'll see how it goes. You know, we never kind of know what WWE just does from one day to the next.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like the longer Nakamura doesn't have the title, the more he kind of drops and loses that steam. I think when you keep him on a good performance, I think if you keep the feud going, I don't foresee anything wrong with it. And I think what Josh said, alluded to at the end where he attacked them, and I think like that's a good scenario to really make sure that that's going to kind of keep going in the right direction. And I think eventually what happens in these longer feuds too is that everybody gets tired of seeing the regular singles match, and we're going to see, a gimmick match at some point. And I think that's going to be really good because whether it's a steel cage, Hell in the Cell, I mean, I don't know what the next pay-per-view is for WWE coming up, but I know that we're getting really, really close to Survivor Series. I think that's where you might want to see the payoff of that gimmick match come out. If somebody wants to check it and they can tell me, but that's fine. I think the other real big news that we heard out of this before we switch over to the AEW side for All Out is basically main event Jey Uso now being on Raw during the Grayson Waller segment with Cody Rhodes. And it looks like it's potentially setting up something with Cody and Jay. There seemed to be this mutual respect there. There was a couple of dirty looks that were thrown by Cody. And I think it's a great move by WWE. I think it's a tough move for Jimmy because Jimmy's going to take a lot of slack on SmackDown But I think Jay's just such a big star at this point that it's kind of hard to really ignore that. I agree that I think, Josh, you were saying before, you're taking away one of the best tag teams of all time. But I think at the end of the day, when you're going through, I think you can take a shot, and if it doesn't work out, you can always throw them back together, and you're kind of right back where you started, right? So that'll be an interesting concept too. So lots of good stuff. We're filming on a Monday, so it'll be interesting to see what happens on Raw tonight, and we'll keep you updated as we go along. But from here, we're going to move on to a crazy show that happened. Yeah,
Hey, Matt.
Josh, go ahead.
So, September 8th, WWE Superstar Spectacle in India, and then WWE NXT No Mercy at the end of September.
Yeah, I think they announced Crown Jewel today too, eh?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, November 4th, I think.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. There'll be some PLEs that will show up, especially the ones that are out in Jeddah and, up in India and all that stuff. Like, those are at usually at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Those are kind of like the Wembley hours. So it'll be really interesting to see
Yeah,
those.
and Survivor Series is generally Thanksgiving.
November 25th.
U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Thanksgiving.
It's one of my favorite.
Or used
one of
to
my
be.
favorite pay-per-views.
Yeah, it's November 25th this year.
Chris, those were the best. Those were the best pay-per-views to watch on VHS when you were watching those 8-man tags and having the sole survivors. And what a great way to push! And doesn't get used as much anymore, unfortunately. But anywho,
I wish it did. That elimination style was so cool. You had like the Ultimate Warriors versus like the dungeon, and it was so fun. And then you'd have somebody who goes down like 3 guys right away, right? And then all of a sudden they come back to win it. It was and the gobbledygooker was always there.
and then on top of that, it's kind of like what happened last night in the 0 hour show, when you kind of had Hangman Page in the Battle Royal, and then he's going up against 2 of the Embassy members at the end. He was going up against Brian Cage and I'm trying to think of the other one. Anyways, 2 of the Embassy members, after they said that Prince Nana was going to donate all the money to the Mogul Embassy charity fund or whatever it was, so he was going to take the money for himself, and so Paige won it, and that was great. But anyways, we're going to talk about All Out. We're going to move into this, which was in Chicago. Biggest news right off the bat we talked about at the beginning of the show was the termination of CM Punk. We're going to try and really focus on the matches here, but there was a couple. It was kind of a shock because you have a PLE the week before in Wembley, which is the biggest event, basically, one-day event of all time, with 89,000 tickets sold. And then a really weird decision by Tony to really kind of go in and have another pay-per-view the next week in Chicago. And to be honest with it, I kind of looked at the card. We kind of looked at the card in the beginning, and it's obviously not going to be as flashy as Wembley, but there were some really good matches on this card. And I was really, really shocked to go through it. At one point, I'm like, do I really want to spend the $39.99 US to get it? And I'm on a podcast, so I kind of got to buckle down and do it. But it was like, these matches were worth it going through. We'll talk about some of the the highlights that came out of some of the matches, but the 3 matches that we actually previewed were basically Kenny Omega and Takeshita in a singles match with Don Callis at ringside. We went through the 8-man tag, and we also went through Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley for the international title, which actually turned out to be the main event of the evening. But what we are going to kick it off with is we'll kick it off with the 8-man tag, which ends up being Bullet Club Gold, the Bang Bang Gang, going against FTR and the Young Bucks in an 8-manner. And 8-man tags have a tendency to be kind of chaotic. We talked about this on the preview show when we went through. Bullet Club get the win after some miscommunication from the Young Bucks and FTR on getting back into the ring. But basically, really psychological match where basically Dax Harwood was kept out of it from making a tag for almost 10 to 15 minutes in the match. And then basically all hell broke loose and a whole bunch of crazy shit happened. So Chris, you looked at this match. We're talking about this could be the match of the night just because of all the teams involved. You got three of probably the best tag teams in AEW in this match, but and kind of an X factor with the Guns, even though that they have been tag team champions, they're still a little bit green coming into this match. Who do you think stole the show out of the 8-man tag for these guys? Do you think that there was somebody that really come up, or do you just think it was just a group effort that ended up being really strong for a good performance?
It was a good match. Probably my favorite of the weekend, I believe. If I talk and I jog my memory, there might be another one, but I found my eyes always going to Juice again. Like I found I was still watching Juice, still watching what he was doing, and maybe it's because I'm a little more interested after we kind of talked about the last pods or the review. So maybe that's just naturally bringing my eyes to Juice, but I thought he did well. I thought the Guns showed okay. I didn't think I had no arguments with them. Didn't see any parts where I just said, oh yeah, there's the Guns. Good storytelling in the match, some back and forths. We saw some tandem. We saw a tandem big rig. Sorry, what's
Shatter
not
Machine.
the big rig anymore?
Shatter
is it?
Machine.
It's yeah. We saw Shatter. We saw FTR and Bucks Shatter Machine, so that was cool. Like you like to see stuff like that. I think we're just building more towards maybe what Josh says on the review is to maybe a 4-way between those 4 teams. It really seemed that way, especially if FTR and the Bucks are still kind of not on that level, which clearly there was a miscommunication, so they're going to be at each other again. I guess what you could do with the Bullet Club Gold is kind of you can have the Guns say that they were the MVPs and Juice and Jay White say they were the MVPs, and then maybe create some turmoil within BC Gold, and then that sets up your 4-way. I just don't see them completely, if they're going to put the Guns in this match, I don't see them completely kind of getting them out of the picture. So I guess overall I think the MVP would be all Bullet Club Gold. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, and you know what? They're really solidifying themselves as really a main draw stable, and I think eventually you're going to kind of look at this Bullet Club Gold versus Elite kind of scenario, and whether that's going to be with tag titles or not, I don't think I really care. I think when you put those guys in the ring together, I think it's going to be great. Juice, from a level on a tag team perspective, like the technique and just basically the overall psychology that he brought to that match was fantastic. He was basically a stabilizer for the rest of the teams to go crazy. And it was already crazy. I mean, Josh, you heard on the pay-per-view, at least I hope you did, where basically the Young Bucks got booed every time they tagged into the match. Obviously because of the CM Punk link and everything that's kind of coming through there. So when you're kind of looking at this, we talked about this match in the preview and we were discussing the chaos. Did the chaos of this match really affect the match rating or your overall grade when you're looking at this match as a whole? Because personally, I felt it did for me. Like, I felt there were some spots that they were just all over the place, and my favorite parts were when they were really just in the ring, just trying to stop all the bullshit from happening, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was surprised when Chris said that this might be his favorite match. It was actually one of my least favorite matches. It was reasonable. Like, the wrestling was great, but the confusion and the chaos. Like, at one point, even the announcers didn't know who were the
legal men,
people who were supposed to be tagged. Like the actual fighters. And so it was just really, I don't know. It was lots of great spots and it was entertaining, of course, but as a wrestling match, for me, it was one of the hardest ones to follow, and I found that I was getting, distracted by what was going on, and I like to keep track of who the legal men are, and it was kind of challenging. So it was a good match, but it was definitely not in the top 3 for this card for me. It was. I think it's just leading to more story. The finish kind of seemed like, the finish was fine. But it kind of seemed like everybody was confused, but I think that was just part of the story. Like the Young Bucks were like, "Oh, sorry, hey, kind of sucks." There's really no consequences to losing a match like this, anyways. So hopefully it goes somewhere, and hopefully it goes just like Chris had said, And like I had said last week, where we get to see like a fatal 4-way with the tag teams, and then kind of see some disjointedness between Bullet Club Gold, and imagine they're going to be, say like we're going to work together, but then they're not going to.
Yeah, I think one of the things with this is the reason that kind of like what we did in Payback, and we kind of switched the match out. There was potential to switch this match out of our top 3. One of the reasons I really liked it is that still for me it was probably about a B+. And the scenario was that even if you kind of look at the chaos, like Chris, what you were talking about before, this is a match that could have been somebody's match of the night with all the spots and everything that went through. There was so much crazy shit that happened in this match. Like, I mean, the miscommunication and the poor time by FTR and the Young Bucks, really good psychology on their end, and really kind of exacerbate their feud. The Bullet Club Gold really kind of showing a lot of chops to make sure, like, hey, like, we're contenders for these titles, and really move this story forward is something that was really, really important. And that totally happened. But again, I think, Josh, you're absolutely right. When you look at the chaos, if this was a 6-man tag versus an 8-man tag, I think we might be looking at something a little bit different. I think this match probably ends up as an A because there's just less crap going on. So it's just such a funny match because you can kind of lead on either side, and I don't think anybody's really wrong here. Just, do you like the high spots or do you not like the high spots? Do you like technique? What do you like? Because they were all involved in everything. There was charisma, there was mat technique, there was aerial technique, there was everything there. There was storytelling there. Like, the match for me had everything. It was just the chaos of it really threw it off, and that's why I have it ranked lower than what it was. But this is why we put it on the podcast. I didn't want to throw it out. I love to see what both of your scenarios were looking at this. So, other than that, probably one of the best matches of the night. We're going to talk about 2 of the best matches of the night, and then we're going to talk about a couple small bangers that came out from some of the notable moments that we had. But we had a really big singles match, especially with what happened at All In, where Konosuke Takeshita basically rolled up Kenny Omega, got a win over there. Konosuke Takeshita does the unimaginable at All Out and basically beats Kenny Omega in a singles match with Don Callis. Now, obviously, there was some trickery and tomfoolery by the Brown Noise leader of the Don Callis family. Me and Chris love the Brown Noise. We were talking about it in the text, though, too. But this match was hard-hitting. And the elbows that were thrown, the knees that were thrown. Chris, I think when you look at this match, there was a couple times where Kenny Omega was dropped directly on his head. Like, there was a couple suplexes that happened through there, and I know that when we talk about wrestler safety and we talk about everything like this, it didn't seem that this match really had that. It seemed like it was just like, let's kill each other and see what happens. But when Kenny landed on his head on that, I don't know what your thoughts were. My first thought was, I wonder what Chris is going to say about this on the podcast. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. Again, sorry, was that on a high back? Yeah,
it was a high back. It was like a high back. It was supposed to be a flat suplex. It was like one of those high arcing, like
yeah, like a Japanese backdrop, basically. Yeah. So, it's like the Tiger Driver 91. Do we need Kenny to sell it that much? I mean, and that's a big thing of AEWs, though, that those guys can sell as well as put on moves, right? And it looks good, but I mean, the margin of error for something like that is so close. And I mean, Kenny's one of the guys who got you there. He's one of the, and the match was great. I had a great time watching this match. Like, it was fun. I found this one got the crowd into it for what I thought was a pretty kind of low-sounding crowd for a while, but they started to come alive during this match, and we didn't expect that. We didn't expect Takeshita to kind of come out and get that W, but it's good to see where the story's going to go. Kenny working with a young big guy. They've done a match. It looks like the match can work. There's some time for them to get familiar with each other, put on a story, have some even better matches. And Don Callis, I swear he draws on that scar, because sometimes it looks really bad and sometimes it looks like it's barely there.
Oh man, and you know what? Fun fact after this one, guys. Chris, after we talked about the preview show, totally watched Bloodsport after we talked about Bolo Jung and basically Chong Li from Bloodsport. He totally watched it afterwards. Now, Josh, on top of that backdrop that we saw, but kind of a similar question to you, we saw a reverse poison Rana that looked unbelievable. We saw a blue thunder bomb off the top where it looks like Takeshita landed on his dropped Omega on his leg at one point. We're looking at a lot of things here. Do you think those things that they were talking about with production that we discussed before with some of the, obviously the thing that CM Punk was getting mad at, like glass or these head drop moves, do you think that just got thrown out the window in production for this match?
No, I don't think so. I think that I still think it's somewhat of a work, anything that gets leaked from AEW. So I'm not sure if that was kind of I think most of it was just that they had to just get that pre-approved so that everybody knew to expect the spot. I think that it was, the match was great. I think that it was, one of the better matches on the night. Even, shout out Kenny Omega, you could just see that, although there was a spot where he slipped when he jumped off the top rope, he still made it work by going to the knee. And although the announcers didn't sell it like it was on purpose, it could have been sold at the way I looked at it is when he did that and hit Takeshita's knee, it looked like that's what he was going for. Maybe he was going to target the knee for the rest of the match. I liked that they introduced the screwdriver, but the screwdriver didn't really impact the finish because the referee got in the way. It may have, caused the delay enough that gave Takeshita that advantage. But I think that, this is just the beginning of a longer feud. Hopefully they have another match, and then maybe it's a gimmick match or something like that. Best 2 out of 3 Iron Man match or something like that, or some way to get Don Callis out of it. But yeah, it was really, really impressive, and I think that Kenny, especially Kenny, he kind of spits in the face of those rules. He kind of just says, yeah, those rules might be for everybody else, but they're not for me. Similarly, John Moxley, those rules don't apply to John Moxley because, it's like, oh, you can't have this, you can't have that, and John Moxley's busting out the thumbtacks and the glass and the massive stomps that he loves to do.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many last night.
They were actually the best stomps that I've ever seen John Moxley do.
They still weren't good.
Shout out. They weren't, but the first few were good. But yeah, anyways.
I think there was kind of we'll get to that match in a second, but I'd have to agree. I think a lot of people would look at this match or the main event that we're going to talk about, and they'd probably hit back and say that because of where they were in the card and how they were those were probably the 2 matches of the night, right? And I don't think anybody can argue, but I think this Omega Takeshita Don Callis feud has been great, and it's I'm really hoping to see what the payoff's going to be. I think Don Callis, when you watch him as a manager, he's got a brilliant wrestling mind. He always has, but his ability as a manager to really kind of step up, even if you remember his old work that he did in ECW, when he was part of the network, and he's just got this face that you want to just punch. And he's just he's so easy to hate. And I think I think when you look at a lot of it, when you go through, I think that's really his heel heat, right? He's not looking for this cheap heat. He's looking for this real good heat. And I think in a lot of cases, just watching him along the at the bottom of the floor, really getting involved in the 2 counts, really getting involved by chirping the fans. And like Chris said, just even the draw on that scar is definitely getting much, much darker from every time we see it. It's just part of the flavor of the match, and I think he added to it a lot. I think he brings this up probably about a half grade if he's not there. If he's not there, the match will drop a half grade. That's what I honestly believe, and it's just because you just want to kill Don Callis, and that's just what you want to bring as a manager is either that heat or you want to bring that pomp and that energy to the match when you go through. So from there, what we're going to kind of go through is we'll talk about the main event of the evening, which was, like we said, for the International Championship. It was Orange Cassidy against Jon Moxley, and Jon Moxley actually takes the title from Orange Cassidy. I think Orange Cassidy, that was his 32nd defense of the International title since he's gotten it. Match was an absolute brutal one. Josh likes color. Chris likes color. I like color. There was color in that match. Let's believe that. So, just kind of really started off a little slow, but just kind of walked through and you know, it was a beating. That's basically what it was. It was Orange Cassidy really just trying to prove his durability again in a title match, just like he did at Wembley, just like he's done in matches in the past. But this one was just a little bit different. John didn't stop. And you know what? Josh is a big, slice my salami with the John Moxley stomps being nice and weak, and he was hitting them real hard. So we talked about it during the preview show. And we talked about like where this goes. And what do you think happens, Josh, with Orange Cassidy at this point? If you were sitting on it like with Tony Khan tonight, and you were saying, what do we do for Orange Cassidy right now? What are your thoughts and plans for where he goes?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that the loss for Orange Cassidy was actually going to be fine for his career. I am confused as to why why they would put the international championship on Moxley, because I see him more of a main eventer. So it's fine. But I'm not sure. I think that potentially we start to see a different side of Orange Cassidy. Like, as you could see when he was doing his kicks, that he started to, get more aggressive with his attitude. Kind of like maybe he kind of evolved slightly. I still think he needs to keep that slacker kind of that stick because it's working and like it's so over. But I think that if he evolves the character, gets into like a better promos where he's actually kind of like doesn't have the title, but he's vying for the title, or he's that underdog fighting, but he's fighting with some more grit. And I think that's kind of maybe where the evolution of his character goes. Again, always would be happy to see a heel turn. So maybe that's something, where the best friends are like, oh, it's okay, man. Hug everybody, love everybody. And he's like, nah, this. And I would just like to see a turn. But I would understand if he doesn't, because he's the most over baby face. But they did it with Jungle Boy. So I think they can do it with Orange Cassidy. I would just hope for his sake that he continues to keep that character. I think that character that he has, not where he just evolves it, but if he loses that, then he's kind of like, that's kind of what's besides his work ethic is keeping the fans on his side, right? So like, I don't know, but I'd still like to see.
I don't think we're gonna lose him being the top babyface. I think a heel turn is always interesting whenever you have like those top faces in the company, because they lead to our favorite things, which are swerves, right? And I think when you're looking at a lot of them when you're going across, I just don't think my goal here is that I don't want him turning into like a Darby Allin, where we already have Darby Allin, and for those that watch the pay-per-view, Darby Allin and Luchasaurus was a great match too, but they're too different. And I think right now what we're seeing Cassidy just taking beating after beating after beating, and it feels a lot like kind of what's happening with Darby, except Darby's just so, I'm gonna do everything I can to not see 40 years old by throwing my body at everything, where Cassidy's mostly getting beaten up. That's like the only real difference. So Chris, kind of in the nutshell, when you kind of watch this match, I mean, on paper, stylistically, it looks a little weird. You have kind of a brawler against a slacker / aerial artist. And this turned out to be a really, really strong match with a strong story. Did you feel that was the case when you watch it, or did you think that this could have busted? Was it a gamble to put it in the main event slot? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think it's a gamble. I mean, anytime you have Orange Cassidy, he performs, he brings it. Everybody loves seeing him. I thought for a while, this was going to be like the coming out party of like he takes that next step. And then John Moxley, when he won, it did take me aback a little bit, because like, okay, like I don't know. So to me, it seems like time off, and I think it's well-deserved time off. I think, his Orange Cassidy, he kind of left on making that plea that he's never going anywhere. He finally spoke. He finally stopped acting like a slacker. And then, to go out this way, I think it's a good way to kind of write him off TV for a bit, give him a little bit of time off, and then he comes back as that guy. He's been putting his body through hell. but yeah, I was hoping he got the W. I was hoping he'd come out of it and could show that he could beat those top 10 guys in your company. But if it is time off, I do like that they gave him someone the stature of Moxley to take the title off of.
Well, I think the other thing is that people think that this devalues Moxley as a performer, and I have to disagree. And I think the reason is that Moxley is such an easy choice to send to Japan in any choice to go defend a title like that. It's kind of like having the NJPW like US title. It's like, you know that if somebody has that title, they're majoritively probably not going to be Japanese. It's probably going to be somebody to try and get the style over. Like, it's an Osprey, it's an Omega, it's potentially a David Finlay at this point in NJPW. But this is kind of a great spot for Moxley in the sense, like, yeah, this kind of feels like, when Shawn Michaels had the European title for a bit. But I think, like, the ability to have him go defend it in different places and really use it as kind of a thing, because John gets the ability to get on so many shows, which the others don't. And I think that's a really, really important thing to kind of keep in mind. I think that it's great to see. I think I'd have to agree with Chris. I think Cassidy is in line for a vacation. He deserves it. But I think Moxley will carry this title across a few different places and across the pond, which will be really kind of crazy. Just to finish up, there were some other great shows on this card. I mean, there was a couple very, like, when we talk about heavyweight people fighting, like, there was a couple heavyweight tilts in this. Like, when you look at Joe and Shane Taylor, maybe not the greatest match, but Shane Taylor is pretty much one of the, I wouldn't, like, that's about probably a B for me. But at the end of the day, it was interesting to see Shane Taylor, who's like such a, from the history of ROH, just such a big part of that company during, kind of the lower effect years, where basically he kind of kept the show running with Shane Taylor Enterprises, and watching him and Joe basically fight each other was crazy. However, the match that really stood out for me that got a standing ovation at one point was basically Powerhouse Hobbs and Miro, and I didn't expect that at all. I had a feeling it was going to be a good match. I didn't expect that to be an A minus, A plus match for me, and it totally was. It had everything, and I mean, I don't know what you guys thought about it, but you just kind of watched, like, the fans yelling "slap the meat." Josh, you look like you're going to say something.
That was the match of the night for me, actually. I thought I really they both showcased their strength and, like, durability, and I mean, the hard hitting, just the sound and the beating that they gave each other. I was shocked because I think, like, those two guys typically have squash matches. So to see them actually have a match where they go the distance and they have a good outing against each other, and it's good and physical, and each guy has kind of, I don't think that either, I don't think that Hobbs lost anything by losing the match. I think that to lose to Miro is fine, because Miro is basically Hobbs in 10 years, right? So I think that Hobbs, this is just kind of like the next step, and maybe it's the evolution of his character, and hopefully he goes forward with that. And Miro, he's going to continue. I think that I'd like to see Miro lose a couple more times, here or there, because it kind of seems like they always book Miro as, like, he's never going to lose. So if that's the case, then put the heavyweight title on him instead of giving him these secondary titles. But anyhow, I thought it was my favorite match.
I'd have to second that, and that's why, Chris, when you actually said, now that you have your thing, and you're like, this feels like Dynamite Plus or whatever it was, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because when they went to give the handshake at the very end, I was getting emotional because they were getting a standing ovation. And I just thought, oh my God, like I said, if Miro doesn't shake his hand after that match with everything they got, I said that was it. And then they shook the match. And then all of a sudden, Hobbs swerved him. And then I've never felt more as a mark in my entire life at the end when that happened. And then his wife came down when CJ Perry signed with AEW. I guess she's all elite now. I don't know if they've announced that, but and she looks like she's got a bunch of work done too, which is, and I think her I watched it again, and basically her entrance said hot and flexible, which doesn't seem anything like Miro and his redeeming character. And when she showed up and he starts yelling, he goes up the ramp and he starts yelling, "You're not real. You're not real." And, like, you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I was so taken away by that whole match because it just had everything. It had like what Josh said, the physicality of it. It had the emotion in the match, and then all of a sudden it had all these questions, which are now is like, are these guys going to fight again? Now what's going on with Miro and his wife? Now what's going to happen to Hobbs? Now what's like that was just it for me, and I'm so shocked because on a card that good where we have Kenny and Takeshita, we have Cassidy and Moxley. That match for me stole the show, and I would never in a million years think that match stole the show for me at all. So I strongly recommend, if you're watching this podcast and you do not watch AEW, and you're a WWE fan and you've been begging for years about heavyweights beating the shit out of each other, and you think that AEW doesn't do that, go watch Samoa Joe and Shane Taylor, and go watch Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs. And I'll tell you will not be disappointed. I'm not going to sit there and say it's going to make you an AEW fan. But at the end of the match, if you like good wrestling, you like something interesting, you like something that tugs on your heartstrings, just has everything together, that definitely Hobbs and Miro was something else. And Chris, I don't even know. Did you get through that match? Did you end up watching that? Like, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah,
honestly?
I did. I liked it a lot. I thought, echoing you guys, they showed all their strengths perfectly. I think we've been high on Powerhouse for a little bit, like since he lost the overalls and he's starting to, get to open his mouth a little bit more. I think this is like something we've been waiting for, and looks like it's going to go on longer since he swerved him. So that's good. I love the Redeemer character. I've always liked it. And if this is just the first of what we're going to get, I mean, this is going to be 10 times better than Miro and Bobby Lashley.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to see what these two can do with some airtime, because this could shoot one or the other up the moon, or if everything is going well, it could do a lot for both of them.
I feel like for me, this is Miro's one of his last shots. I think Miro, no matter what happens, can be amazing in Japan. He can be amazing anywhere he goes, just on that credibility alone. But I think at the end of the day, if you want a good shot at national TV, like and you're running it, you got to run it now. And I think this is the character, this is the line that you got. Wife or no wife, whatever you decide to do, just go with it, and hopefully it works out. But I think his size, like Josh was saying, makes it very difficult to not have those squash matches. He has to be in those big boy matches and really have those to really kind of get over. And that's a scenario that's really important. Now, last thing before we get Josh slicing some salami on the cutting board with the mortadellas and the pancettas and everything like that. I never thought we'd really be on an AEW card where we're not talking about MJF and Cole. And I'm just kind of shocked about that. I thought everybody really brought it. And I think if we had to pick which card, I think for me it was the All Out card was better than WWE. But I think if we were to have 3 more matches in WWE, we could have a kind of a gunslingers duel there, which would be all right. But really, really interesting. So that being said, Josh, slices your salami, buddy.
All right, today in What Slices My Salami, and I think that we saw a couple of them in the AEW pay-per-view. I also think that AEW's is more, this happens to them more. What Slices My Salami are bad 2 counts by refs or bad kickouts, because I'm not sure, but it seems like a couple times there's some matches that have had some really weird finishes where someone either didn't kick out or kicked out, and it's really obvious, and there's a couple of the AEW refs who are really bad at it, or it's some of the wrestlers who just have a terrible kick out on the 3 count, and it's like the ref stops and you can still see that they've stopped, and then the person moves. It just kind of takes away from the close counts, for the close falls for me. I think that the close falls are really important, and maybe it's just the way that they have the camera angle, but I'm not sure. I tell me if I'm wrong, but was a European uppercut really the finish in the tag match? Or was Eddie's head covered and he didn't hear the 2 count? I don't know. It was really weird because Eddie looked strong in that, and I get it. They were kind of building him up, but even the announcers, I've never seen anybody win with a European uppercut. Maybe it was a bad 3 count. I'm not sure. I don't know if they do that in AEW. It seems like in AEW they actually won't hit the 3 count even if they give a big delay. So I'm not sure. But shout out to Aubrey Edwards because I've never seen her do it. She's the best referee in AEW right now. And that's what slices my salami, fellas.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at that, boys. We're going to get a little bit of a rest after this podcast because I think we'll be back on regular programming starting potentially on Friday night, which would be great. Back to one podcast. I'll be on a work vacation there next week, so that'll be okay. But I think other than that, Chris, is there anything that you'd like to add? Final comments?
Just to like what you said, we didn't talk about MJF or Cole. We also didn't talk that much about LA Knight because his match turned out to be kind of a dud. And I guess clearly what we saw at the end of that is him and John Cena going eye to eye. And we know John Cena's going to be around for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe he's going to get the rub. The other thing I wanted to say was that I did mention this in the chat too with you guys. I did think WWE's commentating was really on point yesterday. On Saturday. Sorry, I thought Payback's commentary really kept me in. Like, there's just the information didn't come up as, I mean, we heard vintage whatever, that's fine. But some of the information they would come up with was kind of new and actually served a purpose. So I don't know. Kudos to the commentating team at Payback.
I think it was funny too when you're kind of going across too, because I think they were talking about Jim Ross again yesterday when they were doing the All Out pay-per-view, and I think a lot of people, when they put JR with Luchasaurus, they find that the connection's not there. But they said that a lot of people online were really actually highly touting JR and Nigel McGuinness together because Nigel McGuinness is a little bit older. Has that scenario where he can kind of go through, and a lot of fans felt that he had a better connection with Nigel than he did with Luchasaurus. So I don't.
You don't mean
Excalibur?
Not Luchasaurus, sorry, Excalibur. Why am I said it because of the Max. Sorry, Excalibur. My bad.
Yeah, I didn't really JR. There was nothing I really noticed bad about JR yesterday. I don't have anything to say about it, unlike in All In.
Josh, any final thoughts?
He was probably just jet lagged.
Yeah, I know, it could be, right? Josh, any final thoughts for you, good sir?
Maybe it's not all a work.
Okay, that seems odd, but
because CM Punk is now, like, remember how previously with the All Out last year, I've been saying it's all a work, and I guess, CM Punk just got fired. So unless he comes back, is it all a work? I did notice that, like, all of All Out had the stars that were similar to CM Punk. And Matt, you pointed out that Sky Blue was wearing CM Punk themed gear. I don't know if she would have had enough time to switch her gear from All In to All Out anyways, because that would have been pretty quick to get her gear switched out. So I don't think that was a nod to CM Punk. But yeah, I guess it's not
some
all.
Some people are saying too. I think I was
I don't know what to believe anymore.
Kind of mistaken. Somebody was saying that there's something about like Chicago involved with the stars and everything too. So I think that's maybe what she was doing, because in the entrance, I guess somebody said something. If you rewatch her in the 0 hour, they actually got her, and she actually said, "I'm from here," because somebody was asking, I guess, like whatever, like I guess when they had her on camera, and she's like, "I'm from here." So, and that was actually right in the entrance if you wanted to catch that. But zero final thoughts for me. It's nice to get a little bit of a break from PLEs. Mind you, it was a great month of August, and going into September, it'll be great. You know what? With that being said, you can hit us up on follows, hit us up on, subscriptions, anything that you need to hit us.
Can I I'll just interject before you get to your final. It's the flag of Chicago.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you for that. So I wasn't completely wrong, which is good. But yeah, I think other than that, for follows, subscriptions, you can hit us up anywhere. You can hit us up on the Apple Store. You can hit us up on Google Play. You can hit us up on Spotify. You can hit us up on YouTube. Captivate will tell us if you're watching or not, because we got it. But wherever you are in the world tonight, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We all bid you adieu from the Red Blessing Podcast. Bang!